Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to take a look at the inevitable fallout from the Conservatives' by-election loss in a safe Tory seat and wonder if this is maybe the beginning of the end of the populism that Johnson used to propel himself to almost despot-like levels. Are the wheels falling off it? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So I've said in the past that Boris Johnson has an impossible balancing act when it comes to preserving his power after the next general election, or whomever is Conservative leader at the time. Not that they are going to be onto a loser. Much depends on Labour sorting themselves out. Of course, you know, governments don't just lose elections, the opposition has to win them. But it is entirely possible. But if we assume that the opposition will sharpen their focus as we get near the next general election, the Conservatives have a serious problem. And it's not one that they can leave for that campaign, or it could be too late for them. The issue is that the Conservative heartlands are all about small government, you know, low taxes, low regulation, populated by people who enjoy stable employment by and large and comfortable lives. Many perhaps don't appreciate how important a safety net is in society because they've never needed it. Whereas in the north of England, yeah, sure, you've got comfortable people as well. But as well as many other parts of the UK, Boris Johnson made it all about England in his populist crusade. So I'm very much going to focus on the north and south of England because that's all the Conservatives care about for this purpose. But in the north, unemployment is a constant threat for a lot of people. There, the safety net is incredibly important and people are aware of this. People don't take public services for granted. Yes, I know an awful lot have just voted for a Prime Minister in whose hands our valued NHS is about as safe, and this is, in the words of John Major, as safe as a hamster would be with a hungry python. But they fell for his lies. The important thing is that they want the investment that he is promising. But delivering that promise is the opposite of low tax and low regulation. People here don't begrudge taxes if we get good public services out of it. In truth, polling shows that most of the South are also happy with a reasonable level of taxation if they see the benefit. But after the Conservative by-election loss, a Conservative MP who had been canvassing, so I'm guessing they were from a neighbouring constituency helping out, they said something quite interesting. They said that the Remain vote came up, HS2, planning, all came up on the doorstep when they were asking voters questions. You know, all of these policy areas are where the current Conservative government are completely out of kilter on local thinking in these sort of areas. But he also said he got a strong sense from these voters that they were paying a lot of tax and that the money was being taken out of their local area and going up north. And why wouldn't they think that? Boris Johnson has made much of the huge injections of cash that he's going to put the north of England's way. People aren't stupid. Might be naive from time to time, but not stupid. They know that public spending has to be paid for by the public. They know that the south of England is the wealthiest part of the country. So if you massively increase spending in the north, of course they're going to think that they are the ones paying for it. And that got me to thinking, is this how the wheels come off? You know, Johnson's populist wagon, the wheels falling off. Is this where he is turning populism into a double-edged sword? Because populism, of course, thrives on the idea of division, a fortress mentality, barbarians at the gates, them and us. He built on the tried and trusted Tory tricks of Britain against Europe, trying to divide Britain against Europe to rally people around him. Told them that Europe was our enemy and that he would save us from them. But it didn't quite work out like that because the impact was not evenly felt across the country. It worked in large parts of England. In the south, where they'd been falling for a steady stream of right-wing media cobblers for decades. In the north, where people felt they had nothing to lose. I've said it before. For many who voted for Brexit in the north, it didn't so much come down to believing the promises of a new golden age. Many did, of course. But for some, it was more that they felt their life was so bad that even leaving the EU, if it turned out to be a mistake, wouldn't make their lives even worse. It was like, well, we're rock bottom. It can't get any worse. Now, I could try and argue that they are wrong and it can absolutely and will absolutely get worse, but that doesn't matter here. The point is that it highlights a mentality that populism needs, the priority of self over society. A very selfish drive. How is it going to impact me? These voters in Chesham and Amersham worried that they were paying taxes only to be sent up north. It's a perception. It doesn't matter whether it's true or not. It's a perception. It's the same mentality. The implication being that they aren't complaining about the taxes being paid as such, but the fact that it won't be used to improve their lives. Johnson's populism already had the unintended consequence of channeling divisions between ourselves. Because those divisions he was creating wasn't between Britain and Europe. It was between different groups in Britain. Pro-Brexit fervour was largely isolated to swathes of England, not so much other parts of the UK. Labour's government in Wales and the SNP's government in Scotland have no problems at all attacking the concept and consequences of Brexit. The only reason you don't get the same thing with the Irish government is because it's a little bit different there. But in Britain, we're only trapped in the self-delusion. In England, it seems. But a lot of right-wing commentators are increasingly open about the breakup of the UK now. They're still waving their union flag, but Julia Hartley-Brewer was the latest to say that the breakup of the UK was a price worth paying for Brexit. But she wasn't the first. Others have been saying it for a while, and polling of Conservative supporters shows that many agree with the sentiment. But there's another unintended consequence, because it can also sow division in England itself. The North and the South, particularly the Shires in the South, fundamentally different. Not just culturally, but politically. Populations have very different priorities. Now, for this next bit, I'm going to generalise. Yes, of course, there are those in the South who worry about unemployment. And yes, there are those in the North who never have to fear paying bills. They'll go through their entire lives never worried about where the money's going to come from. But this is a generalisation which fits for large chunks of both the North and the South. It's no coincidence that Tolkien's hobbits come from a place called the Shire. He based it very much around Shire folk in England. They want to be left undisturbed in their idyllic, green and pleasant land with a cake in one hand and a beer in the other, and nobody causing trouble in their local area. Local place for local people. People in the North want a job. We don't want to worry about the roof over our heads. We don't want to have heart palpitations whenever we hear the post coming. Very different outlook on life that demands very different responses from the government. And not just different, but antagonistic, if not outright mutually exclusive. This by-election loss has got Conservative MPs worried. Those in the Shires are worried about what happens if Johnson presses ahead with his plans for the North. See, on the national stage, what they worry about is a Labour government, of course, because only Labour can form a government. Might be in coalition, but ultimately it's either a Conservative government or a Labour government, whether in coalition or not. But on the local level, these people have no fear of Labour. Labour have no chance in seats like this, not a cat in hell's chance. They are, as Dominic Grieve described recently, Conservative with a small c. They're not at all impressed by Boris Johnson's antics or the UKIP takeover of the Conservative Party, but they are still Conservatives. But the Liberal Democrats came second to the Conservatives in lots of these seats in 2019, a lot of them. And a lot of them were by a smaller margin than in Chesham and Amersham. If Chesham and Amersham can go, there's a lot of others that can go as well. Johnson will try and claim it was just a mid-term warning shot for the Tories. You can't rule it out. People do vote differently in by-elections and local elections compared to general elections. The mindset is different. When people vote in a general election, they are very consciously, by and large, voting for a government. At other times, it can be just to send a message. But Conservative MPs in the South will not want to dismiss this result without good reason that it is just a protest vote. Because if the polls continue to show falling support in the South, the MPs who rely upon these votes for their tickets on the gravy train are going to be a bit concerned. So does Johnson scale back these plans in order to return to more normal conservatism? Well, then he'd lose the support of the Northern MPs, who also quite like their seat on the gravy train and don't fancy being kicked off at the first stop. Many of them will know that their seats will not be retained unless the government delivers, properly delivers. More promises of it being on the way will work on some, but not everywhere. Conservative MPs will lose their seats if Johnson's spending promises don't materialise. And this isn't something he can kick the can down the road with. You can't magic up that promised investment overnight. He can't wait until the general election is here and then just send lorries load of money to the north. If it is to be in place for 2024 or 2023 if they fancy an earlier general election, the building has to start soon. Next year at the latest, surely. And that means the money has to be spent soon. In the most recent budget, Rishi Sunak was persuaded to hold off on tax rises, but not water down the spending commitments too much. That way, he kept both northern and southern MPs on side, giving each what they wanted. But he can't keep doing that. He knows he can't keep doing that. He said as much. You know, he only reluctantly delivered that budget from pressure from the Prime Minister. But he's made it clear you can't keep doing this. At some point, something has to happen that moves the government away from one of these camps. And that's when the fireworks will begin. It should also be remembered that we're not just talking about a few backbench Tory MPs looking nervously here either. There are some very senior members of the government in seats just like Chesham and Amersham with diminishing majorities against Liberal Democrat candidates. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.